Hello, hello. I have been called to start a dream audio journal for myself that can also be helpful to other people. So, I'm going to start with a dream that I had recently, a dream about a bus. And in this dream, I was leaving out of a location, trying to make it to the bus stop because I had somewhere that I needed to be. So in this particular dream, I leave out of a space. I'm not sure what space that was. I just know I walked outside, and in the dream I was standing there, and in my mind I'm like, oh my goodness, I have to catch the bus to get to this particular destination. So in a dream, I'm standing on one side of the street and I'm looking to see where there's a bus stop. So then as I'm standing there, I start looking at direction wise, and I'm like, okay, the direction that I'm going, or the side of town that I need to be on, requires me to be on a specific side of the street. So I'm gonna say we're going to say I looked left and I looked right for directional purposes, and I'm like, okay, so standing on the, and then we're going to call the sides of the street A and B. So at this particular side of the street I'm standing on, I'm going to call this side A. So as I'm standing on side A, I look to the left of me and I look to the right of me, and I'm like, okay, from me standing on side A, in the way that the bus stops are positioned, I'm going to be going to my right. However, if I stand on bus side B, then I will be going the direction which would be to my left. So I'm like, okay, in the location that I'm trying to get to is more of a left side position of where I would need to be positioned to catch a bus to get to my final destination. So in this dream, I'm like, okay, you have to get across the street. So now I'm looking, and then it seems like traffic just picked up a little bit. So traffic picked up, and I'm like, okay, I gotta wait a little bit. But I'm like, ooh, I don't know what time the bus is gonna come. So now I'm not getting impatient in my dream, but I'm like, okay, I'm a little anxious, and I'm like, I have to get across the street so that I can get to the bus stop so that I can see what time this bus is gonna come. So now in a dream, I see where traffic has now started to slow down. So now I have a clear path to get across the street. So now I get across the street to the bus stop that I located when I was looking to the right and to the left of me, and I noticed that the bus stop was a little more left in the direction on the side of the street, which would be side B, and the bus will be going to the left. So as I stated, I walked across the street, and now finally I've made it. I've made it across the street. And now I walk and I approach the bus stop, and then I look up at the sign because they had a sign positioned there, and the sign, it has numbers 1 through, I can't tell you when it ended. I just know that in this particular dream, my eyes glanced at the thing, and then I was reading the destinations that were to the, I'm gonna say the numbers were positioned when I was facing the sign on the left hand side, and then the words that described where those bus stops or locations that that bus would be traveling to were to the right of me. So as I stated, I'm taking a glance at this, and then the numbers 3 and 11 start to stick out to me on this bus stop. So when I'm sitting there and I'm looking, and then I'm like, okay, so it seems like on this sign, these two numbers are the numbers of the bus that I would need to take, either the 3 or the 11. So then I'm standing there and I'm contemplating, and I'm like, okay, and then I look a little further on the side to the right of the words, and then it tells you the time frames that the bus will arrive at that location. Now, I do not remember the specific times that it did have, because as I stated, the only numbers that stuck out to me when I woke up were the numbers 3 and the number 11. So as I'm looking there, I'm like, okay, if I take bus 3, because that bus is going to come first from what it seems like on the sign, that bus will get me close to where I'm trying to go, but it won't get me directly at the location that I'm trying to get. Because if I take bus 3, once I get there, I'll get close to my destination, but I'll have a little ways to walk. So now I'm standing there, and then I look up the road, and I'm like, oh, it looks like a bus is coming. So then the bus approaches, and it's the bus 3. So I'm like, whoo. So now I'm standing there, and I'm contemplating again, and I'm like, whoo, do I get on this bus 3? If I get on this bus right now, because this is the first bus that arrived, then I'm going to get to my destination, but I'm still probably going to get there a little late because I have to walk the rest of the distance, because the bus doesn't get me directly to the space that I need to be. So now I'm contemplating, and I'm delegating, and I'm sitting there, and I'm trying to process, like, okay, and there's people getting on the bus, and I'm like, okay, what do you do? Should I get on this bus, or should I wait? Because then I look back up, and then the 11 is just floating around, and it's just looking like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna come late. However, I'm going to get you where you need to be, and you're going to be exactly where you need to be. It's just going to take a little more time. So now in my waking life, now that I'm expressing this and explaining this and saying it out loud and creating a journal as an audio journal, I'm coming to the understanding that there are some things in my life that I may take the bus that will get me close to where I need to be. And then once I get to that stop, I'm still not where I wish to be. So now it's like life is calling me to wait a little longer for that bus to arrive that will get me directly in the space and position that I need to be in. And it will be on time for that time. Like, for me to not have to put in all that extra work because I was able to wait. So now I'm seeing things in a different perspective, which is why I'm sitting here and I'm recording this, because it may be a segue for you to see something about yourself in regards to just this waiting at a bus stop dream. Are you getting on a bus that's going to get you close to where you need to be because you're trying to chop time, when in reality you're really not chopping down the time? You're actually having to put in more work because you're getting close to the location where you're trying to arrive at, but you're not getting a front row seat or a front row bus stop to exactly where you should be. So I have to ask myself, and maybe you can ask yourself, are you trying to save time or think you're saving time by getting on the earlier bus for the purposes of the fact that you don't want to wait a little longer? Because see, sometimes if you wait a little longer, you will end up on the right bus, even though there's 2 buses that can take you to that area. There's only one bus that will get you right where you need to be, and then you won't have to put in any more effort to try to get to your final destination, because you've waited on that bus that got you at the exact location, even though that bus took a little more time to get there. 3 stands for wisdom and harmony. So I had to have the wisdom to know that I may be putting myself in a position that causes me to have to do more work. And if you require more work, then by all means, do what best suits you. But I'm here to tell you today that if you wait a little longer, the bus that will get you exactly where you need to be, even though it may take a little longer, you will get to your destination. And you will be there. And then you won't have to be exhausted once you've gotten there, because you waited. And that's all I have to say.